the Spreydon ward. And I'm going to do a bit of a round. I think we'll go right around the room, introductions and sort of staff and guests as well. Introduce yourselves. So Jane, do you want to kick us off?
Jane Walters, I'm a community board advisor here. Very new to the role, hence my support.
I'm Aidan Kimberley. My permanent role is the board advisor at Fielderton. I'm here to show Jane the ropes.
Kia ora koutou, Sarah Templeton, I'm the councillor for Heathcote.
Kia ora, I'm Tim Scandrett and I'm the councillor for Cashmere.
Heather?
Will be at home.
Sort of in. Fantastic. Sweet. Sort of Tony.
Kia ora, Keir Leslie, one of the board members for Cashmere.
Kia ora, nā, Roy Kennelly from Community Board for Spreydon.
Kia ora koutou, Tim Lindley, Community Board Member for Heathcote.
And finally, kia ora, Penelope Goldstone, Community Governance Manager for Banks Peninsula, standing in for Grace tonight.
Kia ora, Penelope, very, very welcome. Thanks for stepping up. And just as this will be a good test, Will, we've got Will online. Do you want to introduce yourself, Will?
Yes, hi everyone. My name's Will Hall. I'm the community board member for Heathcote. I just on that note, Callum, I've got no video, but I don't suppose it matters too much.
Okay.
I can't see anything in the room. That's all. I wonder, is that the whole for the whole live stream?
That's good to know. Thanks for that. We'll work on that in the background. Thanks.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Will. Cool. So we don't have any apologies today. Do we have any declarations of interest? Anyone going to make any money out of anything we say we'll do here today? No? Cool. So we're just moving now to confirmation of the previous minutes. I'm happy to move. Tim, do you want to second that? Yep. Cool. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Carried. Cool. So now we move on to public forum. So public forum's a chance at the start of our board meeting for any member of the public to come in. You don't even have to book. You can just rock up to talk to the board for 5 minutes about any topic that you'd like to. So we've got Wilby and Dave, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name already. Anne, come to talk to us about Neighbours Aotearoa. Cool. And that will be all what we've got on the run sheet at the moment, but feel free to come up to the table. Cool. All right. Cool. Oh, kia ora.
There we go. Tēnā tātou katoa, ko te mihi tuatahi, he mihi ki te rungarawa, ko te mihi tuarua, I te papa ki waho, tēnā koe, I te whare itu nei, tēnā koe. Ko te mihi tua tōru, ka mihi au ki Ngāti Māmoe, kia Waitaha, kia Kaitahu, ki te nā tuahariri runanga, te tangata whenua o te rohi nei. Ko te mihi tua whā, ngā mihi nui ki ngā rangatira. O te Waihoro Community Board. Te tāki o te hui, kia hui hui mai mātou. hei tautoko I te kaupapa o te Neighbours Aotearoa. Hei whakawhanaunga, hei korero ki ngā pānui, whakatauki o te wā, mā mua ka kite a Māori, mā Māori ka ora a mua. Those who lead give sight to those who follow, and those who follow give life to those who lead. It's just a little whakatauki that speaks of the importance of working together. Leaders and followers are both essential and codependent, and we see you as leaders here. Me waiata mātou. We just got a waiata o awhi, tautoko for you. Tahi, roa, toru, wha, te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi mari e, tātou e, te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi mari e, tātou e, tātou e. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou.
Yeah, so ko Wilby Ahau, ko Ngāti Pākehā, te iwi, he kaimahi ahau o te Neighbours Aotearoa for Otatahi. And yeah, super grateful for Anne and Dave who came along today. Dave's somebody who really understands how to get to know his neighbours in a really natural, gifted way. And Anna's on the steering group for Neighbours Aotearoa across the motu and has been in that role for many years as part of her mahi with Methodist Mission, Christchurch. But yeah, just want to share briefly about Neighbours Aotearoa. Neighbours Aotearoa is a community-led development initiative which seeks to grow, strengthen and awhi neighbourhood connections all across the motu. It's an initiative that was birthed over 14 years ago, and Christchurch Methodist Mission was super involved from the beginning, and they invited a whole bunch of other collaborative organisations who care about placemaking to do stuff together that they couldn't do as individual organisations. And so we've got inspiring communities in the collaborative agreements. We've got Kainga Ora, Auckland City Council, Wellington City Council, Red Cross, and of course Christchurch Methodist Mission. And it's a pretty special kaupapa that's been going for many years, and a big focal point is the yearly campaign. And so it was formerly known as Neighbours Day, and this year it's Neighbours Month essentially. And throughout March, we seek to really encourage people to focus on three things. And firstly, it's a big celebration of the atahua expressions of neighbourliness that exist all across the motu. Secondly, it's about catalysing and kickstarting new connections. So this year's focal point was supporting everybody to do something during March to help them get to know their neighbours. Could be a small thing, could be a big thing. The theme was let's share. You know, sharing kai, sharing conversation was a really common theme across lots of neighbourhoods. There's a couple of sort of overview things about Neighbours Aotearoa. The third main purpose of that yearly campaign is around raising awareness. And research tells us that when neighbours have a real deep connection to people who live close to them, really good things happen. And firstly, neighbours trust each other more. Secondly, people feel safer in their neighbourhoods. Third, it's a lot easier for a community to start new initiatives when they feel a stronger connection. And lastly, a neighbourhood has way more capacity to respond collectively to social, economic and environmental problems that arise. And when it comes to Neighbours Aotearoa sort of special focus, we got 5 pillars. I haven't been using this very well, and I may not have done a great job. It may not be working, but if someone can flick it, that'd be great. So we got another slide, one more. Here we go. So peer-to-peer participation approach is something unique to Neighbours Aotearoa. Most community initiatives for community building has a really strong focus on an organisation putting on events that bring people together, but it requires affiliation. And so typically it's churches, faith groups, and sports clubs who do a lot of that community building. However, peer-to-peer approach recognizes not everybody is affiliated. And so it's about supporting people to get into different opportunities locally through participation on a peer-to-peer level. And commonly it's through common denominator type activities. So like growing, cooking, sharing, heaps of opportunities around play as well exist within neighborhoods. And the beauty of it is it doesn't actually require a big organization to put stuff on for them. Recognizing in Otatahi, a lot of people I know and journey with don't actually have a lot of energy for putting on a big street party to get to know other people close to them. They don't have a lot of energy to put on a big barbecue for their street, but they do have energy to do something small to get to know a few neighbours who live close to them, which is pretty special. This year, we had a heap of events get catalysed in Otatahi over the month of March, and I think we've got some more photos if we flick through. We have a whole bunch of people who really care about sharing knowledge. People love to share skills. So we had a bunch of workshops around composting, growing kai, and cooking kai that happened. We had people sharing in celebrations. We had a bunch of neighbours get together in Addington and celebrate Pride Week together. If we flick to the next slide, we had people sharing junk. It's a really great way to get to know your neighbours. So garage sales. And of course, we had heaps of sharing kai, barbecues, tea and coffee, get-togethers. And following March, I can really confidently say there's a lot more people in Otatahi have got a deeper sense of connection to their neighbours because of the mahi of Neighbours Aotearoa, which is really special. But looking ahead to next year, there's a lot of anticipation about what sort of activities might happen next. And we've got a bunch of organisations locally in Otatahi who want to jump on board the kaupapa and help spread awareness. And I wanted to come to you and acknowledge that we have an awesome initiative. Christchurch City Council has Summer with Your Neighbours, which is a very similar vision, to grow connected communities and neighbourhoods. The two initiatives, I think, have very different approaches. And I think those approaches actually complement each other. And so I want to invite you to consider how could you potentially initiate or utilize both initiatives going into next year. That's all from me. Ngā mihi nui, kia koutou. Thanks for listening.
Ngā mihi nui, kia koutou. Thanks, Wilby. I hope I'm not speaking too early on behalf of the board to say that I think we'd be definitely keen to look into collaborating somehow between those two programs. Have we got any quick questions? Tim?
Because we get a huge feedback with regards to some of your neighbours, and it's really, really well supported by communities. So do you think there's a gap there which we can't see because we're getting, obviously we're getting really good responses, or how do you see what do you see the collaboration as? Because if we've got something that's really working well and people love it, and we've almost got too many people taking part in it, which is, we've just got up the budget. But I just, because I think they're doing the same thing in their own way.
And there are some similarities. I think one area of interest is, who are the demographics that are really benefiting from some of your neighbours? And I wonder if an event which typically requires 3 to 6 months of organising caters to groups of people who are already highly organised and have a high level of stability with housing security. And I wonder if it really works well for neighbourhoods with high percentages of owner occupiers, as they have got long-term connections because they have lived in a similar area for long periods of time. Whereas for neighbourhoods which have got far higher transients and turnover because it's predominantly renter neighbourhoods, in those situations, I wonder if there's not a stronger uptake with the Summer with Your Neighbours initiative.
I guess it's something we could look at, say, with our housing
Absolutely.
trusts and others, you know,
Yeah.
but, you know, yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your time, Wolby and Dave and Anne. Thank you. Appreciate it. Cool. So come now to deputations. So what we have, the way that I'm proposing to run this is we've got 3 deputations for 3 separate reports. And rather than doing all the deputations up front and waiting for those reports, we'll do deputation for the tennis and squash club and then the report for that issue, and then deputation for the proposed stopping restrictions on Stourbridge Street, etc., so that we're saving people's time. So firstly, deputations by appointment for those in the audience, deputations for people to come and speak to a particular issue that the board's talking about today, a report that we've got in front of us. And you've got 10 minutes to come and speak to that issue. And that includes questions as well. So if you're getting close to time, I might interrupt you just to give an opportunity for discussion. So first up, we've got Sumner Tennis and Squash Club. So Nelson Glass. Awesome. Thanks, Nelson.
Thank you all very much for letting me come and talk to you.
Oh, yep. Just make sure your mic's green. There's a button. Oh, yeah. Sweet. That'll work. Thanks.
Thank you. My name's Nelson Glass and I'm the treasurer at Sumner Tennis and Squash Club. And that's our club up there.
I think the pointer might be not working very well, so just let us know when you want us to switch slide.
There we go.
Oh, cool.
And this is our proposal to redevelop some red zone land that borders our tennis club. And some of you might have seen it before, and I apologise if you have. There's a few figures that have changed, but I took the opportunity to come again anyway. Thank you. Are you doing that? Am I? Yeah.
I think, yeah, Jane's doing it.
Oh, thank you. So I'll just tell you a little bit about our club. 2021, we were voted the best tennis club in Canterbury for the Canterbury Tennis Association. We've got more adult members per court than any club in New Zealand. And with we've got now 370 adult members and 50 on the wait list. It just sort of continues to grow and we try and bring them in as we can. Thank you. We're sort of a multi-sport club rather than just a tennis club. We play a lot of table tennis, have a club champs for that. We've got 3 indoor squash courts, table tennis, darts, and there's even a basketball hoop for the kids to shoot some hoops. We've got one of the lowest fee structures of any club in the country. And in fact, the figures on the right are correct. We're $500 now for a family membership and $270 for an adult. And you can see at $500, I haven't actually updated the other clubs. I presume they've increased over the last year as well, but even at $500, we're still one of the cheapest tennis clubs. And as far as tennis and squash clubs combined, we're one of the cheapest in the country. We're quite a social club and well supported by our members, and that the social activity helps fund the membership. And so we use that to keep our subs low. That's a table I did up just showing how much use our courts get. We've got 4 tennis courts and in the peak summer seasons, February, March, our busiest months, and we're running about 6 hours per court per day. And even in the middle of winter, the darkest months of the year, we're still 2 hours per court per day. That's what, just a picture of one of our squash courts and our dartboard. And for those of you that don't know where we are, we're right underneath Scarborough Hill and just 2 blocks from the kids' playground on Scarborough Park. Our proposal is to develop the red zone land opposite the tennis club into a public-private sport facility and park. The tennis club would cover the cost of installing 2 new tennis courts that the public would be free to book and use. This would enable us to clear our wait list and grow the club and promote tennis to a wider Christchurch community. There'd be scope for basketball or pickleball courts for the public. We've put a walkway linking Nayland Street through to Heberdean Ave, and there's plenty of room there for enough setbacks so that we can keep out of the way of the neighbours and mitigate the risk of rockfall, I understand. And also there'd need to be good council access for their vehicle into the pump station off Nayland Street. That's a pickleball court. It's fastest growing game in the USA, and plenty of room in there for a pickleball court if there was demand for that sort of thing. That's basketball court, same sort of deal. We can fit something like that in there. So that's just, yeah, satellite image. You can see our tennis court. You can see our 4 tennis courts at the bottom of the screen there. There's 2 houses between us and the red zone land. And then there's 1 block up to the kids' playground at Scarborough Park. So it's a pretty well positioned piece of land for us, actually. We had a landscape architect at the club very kindly donate that sketch, just showing how 2 courts would fit on the land and how there's plenty of room, you know, for other activities as well, if they were wanted. And just a satellite overlay showing the same deal. So the advantages to Christchurch Public and to the council, as we see it, would be that there'd be a public tennis facility just off Scarborough Park with room for expansion into pickleball or basketball, and that the tennis club would pay for the 2 tennis courts and fundraise for the development of as a whole, hopefully mitigating any cost to the ratepayers of Christchurch. The advantages to us is that it's a once in a lifetime opportunity really to expand our club and to meet the growing demand that we have from our community. And it's the ability to promote tennis to wider Christchurch and provide a facility that many people can enjoy, which is constitutionally what we're trying to achieve as a club. Yeah. Thank you very much for your time, and any questions?
Excellent. That was very concise. Lee, and then Tim.
I suppose the only residual concern is just we obviously got residential properties right next to it. So just wonder if you've had any initial engagement or feedback from those parties. Not that that's your job, that may well be a council process.
Yeah.
But I just wonder if you've had an initial conversation.
Yeah, some of them are members of the club and obviously keen to see that sort of thing happen. But there'll definitely be, I can imagine that there'll be some that would say that rather not. But it's interesting having just empty red zone land there too. I'm sure that doesn't work the best for people. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tim and then Sarah.
Yeah, you mentioned the pickleball and basketball, and just looking at the map here, where would they go
There's a piece-
relative to those?
Yeah.
And are they,
Sorry.
and you said subject to demand. Do you have a sense of what the demand is?
Not really, no. As a tennis club, you know, we're really keen on getting 2 additional tennis courts on there. Initially in my discussions with council, it was put forward to me that it would need to be a multi-use facility, you know, and then the tone of that seemed to have changed a wee bit over recent months. So there's an area of land closer to Wiggins Street that would fit a pickleball court in there. And then there's an area of land to the north, which would fit a basketball court. So I can see there's room for both, for all, but as a club, if we were looking for funding for those things, we might look to the council and say, you know, would you guys be putting money into a basketball court? Or it's quite outside of our core sort of, we're a racket sports club really. Yeah, pickleball, there's a lot of demand within inside the club for people to play pickleball, especially in the older generation actually. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. Sarah?
Thank you. So you've had some conversations with neighbours and some potentially might not be quite so keen. Is that because they don't want an activity there or because they have other ideas for the land?
The neighbours I've spoken to have been keen.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
I haven't spoken to any
you see.
neighbours that are unhappy, but I bet there will be neighbours that are unhappy, yeah.
Yeah. And do you need all of it? So my recollection from several years ago, and I'll be asking staff, is that there was someone else who had expressed an interest in a small part on Nayland Street. Yeah. So
Well, you can see by our
it
map
looks like
there.
a space to, if we needed to.
Yeah, we can probably push one court closer to the other one. It depends on the rockfall line that's drawn by the council for how far you have to be off the cliff.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if
it looks
there's,
great. Yeah.
yeah,
So
and we've got the money too, you know.
Yeah.
We can actually push forward and get into it too. So we wouldn't leave you sitting around with an empty plot.
and then
waiting
you'd be
somebody.
doing all the maintenance and stuff on site. You'd have the
Yeah,
whole
I think
site.
that would have to be part of the deal, wouldn't it? That we
Yeah.
would then maintain it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
A question from Keir.
So what is pickleball? And more seriously, what is the size of the court that you need for pickleball?
Yeah, pickleball is the pickleball court I don't actually know the dimensions of it. I did look at it when I did the presentation, but it's a year ago now and I can't remember. But I think it's basically, if you look at the tennis court with the net going through the middle, it's the service box, it's the end box taken off each side. Yeah. So it's a much smaller court and it's a very fast-paced game with a, if you played racquetball maybe on a squash court, it's a much bouncier ball. It's very fast-paced. It looks a lot of fun. It's worth checking out on YouTube.
All right. Any other questions? No. Thanks so much, Nelson.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Cheers.
So we're going to jump out of deputations just to go straight to the report. So if, yeah, Dave, and if you guys want to pop up. Cheers. Cool. I'll let you go walk us through it.
All right, this might have to be a sort of double act because there's a lot of technical detail that I'm not across in terms of the leasing and the property aspects. But I guess from a red zone perspective, I've been having discussions over the last few months with Nelson, which has resulted in the presentation. We looked into the geotechnical risk because obviously that's the key aspect for any of the red zone land in the Port Hills. And the long and the short of it is that the geotechnical risk primarily affects the road itself, Hebridean Ave. And so my understanding is that it was red zone because there was no longer any legal access or legal safe access to those sites. There's a very small amount on the residual land, but it's almost entirely on the road itself, which means that our geotechnical expert, Jesse Dykstra from TSD, has said that this is a suitable use for the land in terms of the risk level. But obviously anything that is proposed should stay off that road and that should stay sort of outside of public access just in case. From a red zone perspective, we're comfortable with it. We've got 445 properties in the red zone and we have to maintain them all, and that comes with an operational cost. So where there's a sort of an opportunity for a what looks to be a win-win type of situation, we're quite happy to look into them. As you'll be aware, there's the wider project which we're looking at sort of strategically across the entire Port Hills portfolio, and whether it's safe to consider disposal or long-term use of those. And that's all going to end up coming through the LTP next year. We're recommending, because of the current proposal, that this one gets looked at in advance of that, also noting that it's not a disposal, it's a long-term lease instead. It's probably a summary from my perspective. I don't know, Angus, if you've got anything to add?
I might just clarify the resolutions you're being asked to pass. So technically, the community board could approve the lease, but the first step is you're being asked to agree to deal unilaterally with the tennis club, which is a departure from policy and therefore requires a council decision. So this decision will need to be put through as a Part A item to council to firstly decide we're going to depart from policy, deal unilaterally with the tennis club. Then there's some consultation requirements under the Local Government Act, Section 138, disposition of land, because it's a long-term lease. And the resolutions set out a consultation process there. If we go through that and there are objections and we can satisfy them, we've set out the lease proposal there to be resolved and we would carry on. If there are objections and we can't satisfy them, then we'd bring those back to the community board and you'd have to weigh those up and make a decision on them.
Excellent, thanks. I know, Sarah, you had a question, and then Keir, and then Lee.
So in the relatively early days, in the couple of years following the red zoning decisions on the Port Hills, and they went, from white to red mostly, there was a process set up whereby people could register their interest in bits. And I know that there was a bit of a late started, but we've had a massive staff turnover since then. And I don't know what happened to it, but I do recall one person ringing me that I said to call staff or call the organisation and have their name registered. And they were looking at a potential, actually just to put a leased space for an additional garage. And I'm pretty sure it was on either Wigan or Nayland on this thing. Is there any record of that anywhere?
I think we inherited a list from Lynn's about interest in
Yeah.
the Port Hills land. Customarily, it's not our practice to maintain lists of people that want property, but I know we have a list on Port Hills land. I'm not personally aware of that proposal.
No, we have been maintaining that list,
Yeah.
but we've sort of been saying, we'll take your details, but we can't guarantee that
And
that
that's
means,
it.
yeah, you're
Yeah,
gonna
it's
get-
just that it's one of the question is really, have you checked that list to see if there's anyone else registered an interest on this piece of land?
No, but we can go back and do so. There's
Yeah.
certainly been nothing since I've been maintaining it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
come up. But
I
there
think
might
that
be
would
an
be
older
useful for
one.
council to know
Yeah.
before council makes a
Yep.
decision to
Yep.
Mm.
we can
to
do
go
that.
unilateral, just the process, just to keep it as clean as we can.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd be much more in favour of a community use than private garaging. Yeah, and so you'll have to make a decision at some point of whether alternate uses or whatever are something that can be satisfied. I would prefer, just so you know, that if someone did say that rather than you just blocking off a little section that, you know, that someone might use for personal use, that was the type of thing that would come back to the board for weighing up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it does mean a short delay, but I think that the best community use is probably what we want here. So.
Kia.
Just looking at 6.6, have you heard back if there is any, if Mana Whenua do have any interest in this land? And what would be the process if that did? Obviously, it's, you know, that may come back. What would happen if there was some comment? I mean, I think it's unlikely, but still.
Yeah, I think, apologies, Kathy dealt with that bit of it, and I did see an email which I think said that there was no interest, but I could be wrong about that, so I might need to double check.
Lee, and then Mel.
So I was just playing this forward, and again, I really like the concept of community use. It's obviously something that would be favourable. And the land use, I just wouldn't want to go down a road where we almost agreed on lease and the land use was problematic moving forward, like there was a resource concept needed for the use of tennis courts. So I just wanted to play that forward, where that would get mitigated, and when that should be addressed, and is that an issue or not?
I'm not aware that it may or may not be an issue, but what we would do in terms of sequencing and timing, once we get a decision from council, we would be suggesting that we have a pre-app meeting between the tennis club and our planners, just to make sure there's no significant issues.
Yeah, again, I'm not trying to create red tape that we don't need. So
Yeah,
if there's
yeah.
a better rate, I wouldn't want to get a situation where we've progressed and.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Yeah.
We would do that. So I think after the council meeting, we'd have a pre-app meeting and just work through those issues.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mel.
Yeah, and the resolutions about if there are any concerns and to be with the consultation. And Sarah was just saying about talking to the board, but this talks about taking them to council for consideration, which obviously council will make the final decision on this. But I just wanted to clarify where community board is in the sequence of what happens next. Particularly, you know, if there are any concerns.
That's a good point. I would have thought they could and should come back here, because the council decision is to depart from policy, but the community board has the delegation over the lease. So I think that that could be amended.
Amended, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good spot, Mel. So that would basically be amending 2B to say concerns back to the board
Yes.
rather than to council.
Yeah, because we would see, if there's no objections, we'll just be carrying on. But if there are objections, then it's a board decision over the lease, and the board can hear those and make that decision.
Yep.
Sorry, just to follow on, so on 3 in the second line, it says that council approves the lease. So does that mean council or council staff council?
Well, there's a delegation further on in the resolutions to implement the lease. I think the confusion here is there's 2 separate decision-making bodies. Council's making one decision, community board the other, and it's just been bundled up and said council. Sometimes when there's mixed delegations, we just put it to the, we'd come through the board and the council just makes all the decisions. But I think that
But
that
three
could
would
be amended to the
community
board.
Though, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that kind of 2B makes it community board. So the
Yeah.
council after 2B anywhere mentioned, because you said that the lease would be, then the decision on the lease would be the community boards. So therefore, in 3, that would be community board, not council.
Yeah. That could be,
Yes, because we have delegation over the lease.
yeah, I think where it's got into their conditional on my recommendation one above, you could bundle that other one into, you know, to come in under that. So subject to the council resolving to depart from policy, the community board have approved the lease. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool. Would it be worthwhile, just because this report has that in writing that we haven't heard back from mana whenua, that we just include a bit of a provision in there, or? Okay. Yeah, okay, sweet.
I'm reasonably confident there's no issues because Kathy would have told me if there was.
Cool.
I would be aware of that.
Perfect. Okay. Are there any further questions? Yeah, is there, oh, sorry, I can see it in front of me, but yeah, sorry, can we get that resolution up on the board? I mean, I think in principle, this is just a great example of a win-win situation. You know, so it's a good use of otherwise unused land for a community purpose by a group that's motivated to do awesome things for their community. So details pending. Let's give,
If I could make a comment, it might be good if resolution 3 became resolution C.
2C.
So conditional upon one above, the council, the community board resolve to.
Gotcha.
I just think it fits nicely.
Yeah, no,
as
that's
ABC.
true. Yep. Yep. Okay, just give everyone a 20 seconds. Is everyone happy that that's, everyone had a chance to read that, what's on the screen? Cool. All right, do we have a mover? Tim? Second by Sarah. All those in favour? Aye. Against, abstentions, carried. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. So next up, we have Julian Odering. Is Julian here? Oh, howdy, Julian. Welcome on. So if you come up and you have 10 minutes to speak to your issue. And if the microphone in front of you is green and pointed at your face, then that's all.
It is green and it is pointing at my face. Yes.
Excellent. And if you, I know you're probably not going to go on for 10 minutes, but if you want to save time as well for discussion, that's always good. Off you go.
No, great. Thank you for hearing me today. My submission is strictly on a standpoint of safety, and that safety is from our exit on 58 Starbridge Street as we exit the nursery. I'm a director, also health and safety officer of Oderings Nurseries, and I work mostly at Barrington Street branch. That's property to which the submission relates. Over the years, we have many complaints from our customers commenting on near misses they've experienced with oncoming traffic exiting the driveway at 58 Starbridge Street. Starbridge Street is an extremely busy road because of Barrington Mall and service station to the east, and West Spreydon School down the road in Littleton Street that many school children ride past on bikes to get to. Nowadays, many battery-powered scooters that people ride to work on travel at very high speed with no protection in the case of side-on collision with a car. And many don't even wear helmets and are exceptionally hard to see with vehicles parked at the side of the street, blocking the view for cars wanting to exit the nursery both ways, especially right-turning traffic. And you can see a couple of pictures there. That is a picture as you exit the driveway, the exit driveway. And if you're trying to turn right or left, it's very difficult to see oncoming cars coming either direction. During spring months, traffic flows are very high, especially in the weekend days from this exit. Many of the cars driving out sit low to the road, making visibility very limited. On this picture on the screen, I took the picture at 1 metre high, which is the average height of a passenger car window as you're trying to exit. That's about sort of that high on me. And so just to emphasize how difficult it is to see from there. It's a miracle, excuse me. It is a miracle that no serious accident has occurred yet, but it's only a matter of time before it does. Therefore, I respectfully request yellow lines outside 58 Stowbridge Street to the east of painted for a length of at least 8 metres on the road. Thank you for hearing my submission. But it's purely from a point of view of safety. I just do not want to see, and as a health and safety officer of the company, I don't want to see our customers or anybody else come to any harm on this exit. So that's why I want to be here with my submission. So thank you for that.
Well said, Julian. Thank you. Would you have any idea, like a rough idea of the number of vehicle movements you've got coming out of that driveway every day?
I don't want to incriminate myself.
No, that's fine.
I would not have any idea, but there's a lot. There's a lot. I don't know if any of you people have been to Stowbridge Street branch, but on a spring day, there's often a lot of cars parked along there, and I would say over 300, 400 maybe at a guess.
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. Lee? Sorry, Julie.
It's probably more of an option, and I do use that exit when I visit the cafe and the centre as well.
Your mic's not on, Lee. Oh. Sorry about that.
Okay. Just the new developments that's gone into the west. I noticed they put the fence full height. That doesn't help. So my understanding is that they would usually taper that fence down. So that's probably something for us to be more aware of, that we should, the fence is full height as you leave the entrance. So if that was tapered down, like you'd expect, it would certainly add to visibility. So I think that's something we could certainly check or ask staff to check up. Tony will obviously know as well, but
okay,
that would be certainly make a, that would certainly help as well as the yellow lines.
I've got to say, I actually lived on the right-hand side of that driveway. And before I left, I cut that there was a major high fence, at least 2 meters high. I cut that right out, and I took the garden back, probably about 2 to 3 meters back towards the house. And then on the other side of the street, there was a new development, as you said, went in there, and there was an old hedge, which was a fraxinus or a privet hedge there, which was pulled out. You're talking about that new fence there, got you? Yes. Yeah. But it is better than it was. And we also put bumper, car bumper, speed bumpers there to try and stop cars from, because a lot of cars would go straight out. And then I had a complaint from a gentleman who was blind going past, and he whacked the car with a stick and made it pretty plain. So that's the reason why we put those in. We've got slow speed signs there as well. I think it's as you exit. So we've done what we can as far as a business goes, but we haven't got any control of the street.
Yep. That makes total sense. Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Julian.
Is that all? No questions?
Yep, that's it.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you very much for hearing me.
And Tony, did you want to come and speak to the report on this one here? Cool. So this is, just the report on the no stopping restrictions on Stowbridge and Clarence.
Yeah, so we went out and investigated this and agree there is a safety issue with the limited visibility and relatively narrow width of the driveway. So proposing 9 meters of no stopping, which will take out just over 1 car park. It'll leave 2 there for the adjacent property. And we also covered in this report is a similar proposal on Clarence Street South. It's a bit of an unusual location. It's got a build out there. So the business has requested no stopping lines in that location as well. So separate business, but a similar type of issue.
Cool. All right. Any questions? No?
Just that we do address, or we look at the resource consent monitoring team to see if that fence should be tapered. Is that possible in your?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Lee, but I can certainly ask about it. I think in this location it is slightly improved because there's the grass berm between the footpath.
I think because the amount of vehicles using it, I think it negates it. So I think if we can look at it, it would be really positive.
Okay.
Cool. I'm happy to support the board asking for staff advice on that. Yep. Cool. All right. Okay. Do we have a mover, or another? Is that a question? Mel's happy to move. Do we have a seconder, Tim? Awesome. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Carried. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it. Okay. Oh, actually, sorry, Tony. Sent you away too early. We're going to do the Centaurus Road, and then it's here. Yep. Tim's going to move Centaurus Road. All those in favour? Oh, seconder. Lee's going to second it. Thanks, Mel. Always keep an eye on me. Cool. All those in favour? Against, abstentions, carried. And Aotea Terrace. Do we have a mover? Kia's moving. I'll second it. All those. Yeah.
Yeah, it was more, they're parking sort of on the uphill section of it, but if we just put lines there and not round the full curve, it'll look like we're almost encouraging it, so.
Yep, cool. Yeah, let's do questions then if you've got questions, yep. Okay.
These reports are really good, and I do like how they still come to the board so that people can come to the presentation, but otherwise.
No, that's good point, Mel. And actually, we have talked about as a board. Obviously, you're coming to us quite a lot with these little scrappy things, and if there's a way that we can support you to do that in a more sort of strategic and consolidated way, or if it's something if it's the kind of issue that just has to be dealt with in a piecemeal way, these kinds of several meters of yellow lines, we're keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of them do need to be done separately, but I guess what I've done with that driveway one, for example, is tried to add them together. They're the same issue, so
True,
one
yep.
report. So maybe we can do a bit more of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do kind of need to be individually investigated and
True.
consulted on.
Okay, cool. All right, happy with that. So we've had Kia move, and I've seconded the Aotea no stopping restrictions report. Do we? All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Carried. Thanks so much, Tony. Appreciate it. Okay, now we come to deputations by appointment. Hamish Wright. Thanks for your patience, Hamish. Cool.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for letting me speak to you guys. The reason I'm here, I'm the developer of Cashmere Estate, which is the development, I would say new, but we've been going for 5 years now, so it's probably not that new. In the Cashmere and Worsley Valley, it's the last part of the main block of the original Cashmere farm. So I just wanted to come to speak to you guys around the street names and probably get some feedback and a little bit of help. It's not something, I'm a digger driver by trade, so I'm not really versed at naming streets.
Yeah.
So from the stages that we've done now, we're up to about our fourth major stage. We've tried to get as much history from the area that we can, or from the farm. The first stage, the main road in was Long Acre Drive, which was actually the name of the paddock of the farm. So that was called the Long Acre. So we named that one Long Acre Drive. Off there, one of the lanes was Old Stone Lane that led into the Old Stone House, which was the farmer's cottage from the original farm. We had Caro Lane, which was Caroline Murray, who was formerly Caroline Wilson, was the granddaughter of Sir John Craycroft. And she actually was the one that gave me all the information on the past history of farm workers, paddock names, stuff like that. So she was one of the names in stage one. The other one, Aubrey Lane, was one of the farm managers over the time that she was there. As we've went through, it's hard to get a lot of history just on the site as such. So we've tried to incorporate the entire area. We have looked for te reo names. It's probably not a strong point of mine as well. So we've looked for a bit of feedback from the Rananga. They sort of said, hey, you're more than welcome to, but we're not interested. It doesn't have any cultural significance to us. So we would like to use some te reo names, but I don't sort of want to have a stab in the dark and just throw names at them for the sake of it. I don't think that's a good way to go about it. Other names that we have used in our second stage, which was stage 4. I know it sounds a bit back to front, but that was the way they were staged when it was designed. Betty Roberts Lane. So Betty Roberts was a local lady that was instrumental in redoing the old stone house before she passed a few years ago. She was also a local body politician and really leading feminist and peace activist in Christchurch. So that was a name that was actually put forward by the community board at that stage, which was we're very thankful for. The other ones there, McVicar Drive, obviously being the significance of the land previously being owned by the McVicar family, and the adventure park land with the lease to I guess Christchurch City Council now for the adventure park. And we also have Round Hill Rise that heads up to the top of the hill, which was the name of that paddock. As we go through, we've used other names, and our stage, another local one was, sorry, I'll find my piece of paper here, Isabel Matson Lane. She was formerly Isabel Crichton, who was the first woman lawyer admitted to the bar in New Zealand. Isabel grew up on Crichton Terrace, which was the family homestead up there. So that was a bit of sort of significance to the area. The piece of land that we're developing at the moment, I've just recently purchased off Christ College, who owned that block of land for the last 100 years. How they came about it or why they kept it for 100 years, I'm not too sure. But so I was trying to find some names in the current stage that sort of had a bit of history around Christ College or the former land ownership. So had some discussions with the board at Christ College, and they went through their history books and found a bit of information for me. I know that when I put it forward, it does look like a bunch of old white men. And unfortunately, being one of the oldest private boys' schools in the country, they generally are old white men. So my hope was to keep a little bit of significance of that area, just of the relationship. We were a joint venture partner for 5 years, where we've ended up sort of buying them out. They've decided they're a school, not a developer. So we've got, of the rest of the development, we're only about 50% of the way through. So we will have another roughly 10 odd roads, lanes to name. It's getting very difficult for me because you can't use a name that has any significance with a like-minded name, not only in Christchurch, but and also the surrounding areas. So Waimak, Selwyn. So we've got to the point now that it's got to be a double name to be able to get through. Right. So it's something that I put forward as well, is if the community board or even just people in the community have some names that they would like to use that relate back to locals that have been that have some significance in the area, as opposed to, I'm not a strong believer in just throwing a name out or calling it after my kids or worse yet, my own name. So yeah, I guess with the names we've put forward, there's a reason why we did. If it's not acceptable, I understand. And I'm open to feedback, and probably more so open to some names.
Yep, excellent. Got a lot of questions. Thanks so much for that, Hamish. And
thank you.
I've got a question from Mel and Sarah and Lee and Kia.
Thank you for coming in, because we get these in a piece of paper and it's great to have you talk to it. We appreciate that, because I think we're sort of left in the lurch with no information previously. I wanted to know specifically about this one, why Arthur Smith over Richard Smith? Like what's, how do you pick those?
Because A becomes before R, I guess was that. That's probably the only reason. Mm-hmm. So hence why I put both of them in.
Right, and then that's fine. I've got a preference for road 2 for the female who was the latest owner. That was sort of where I was headed. But yeah.
Thanks so much. It's so good having the broader history and stuff on there. We've done quite a lot over the years of road naming and those kind of things. And one of the things that happened with the old community board was that the community came and said, oh, we get no input, we're not allowed input and stuff. I think that your idea of potentially asking the community is a really good one. And I think it would make a great story for, is it Southern View in this area, like local newspaper kind of thing. If you wanted to approach them and say, hey, we've got more developments coming up. This is our criteria. We're running out of names that have sort of historical significance.
Yeah.
If people want to send through ideas, and then you could just pick and choose. And
we did that
cool.
on the last one, and we did get some good, and that was how we got the Betty Roberts lane. The amount that I got through that were people's own names was amazing.
Wow.
They thought that they were, so I guess it's trying to vet it and manage it to a point that people just don't want to leave a legacy of a name named, a road named after them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could specify, you know, it
Mm.
can't be your own.
Can't
or
be
your
yourself or, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there is a sort of a forum that we could use or be involved with.
It's just a case of doing it far enough ahead of time that.
Yeah, correct. And to be fair, the best thing for us would be to get a list that we get okayed by the board. And then we can just use them whenever. So it doesn't have to be for a specific. So if we can get 20 names that are okayed, and then once we get a lane or a road, we don't have to then put forward that it's for road 1 or road 2 or lane 1 or lane 2.
Legally, you might have to do a specific name for a specific title.
Right,
So,
okay.
like we could check that with staff.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, but it'd be great to have.
I guess the point you're making though is that you having options in advance. As
Yeah,
opposed
yeah,
to,
definitely. Yeah, because it sort of seems to be the
Yeah.
last thing that happens before we go for a 224. And
yeah, right. Yeah. I got Tim, but I did say someone else before that, Lee or Tim. All right.
I guess if you know where the roads, you've got the roads, if we know, there's 1 to 20, then because I do understand the pain of having to come back again and again and again. So if you've got the vision and the sketch
within reason, yeah.
So yeah, we can probably try and get as many names done as to those areas. So you only have to come back maybe 3 times rather than a dozen times.
Yep. Yeah, that would be great. We're down to probably what I would call close to a final sort of bulk and location plan. So yeah, I guess I'll count up how many there are and put it on a plan and
Because it's
that'd
about
be
doing
great.
the right process and getting the right in for everybody, and so saving time for everybody would be good as well.
Yep. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Kier, or sorry, Lee. No, I did say Lee and then Kier. Apologies.
Hey, just similar vein to what Sarah said earlier, I think the best people who know that area probably aren't the community board, it's the residents association. So people like Alistair, Rick, John Cousins, those people. So I know you've had some correspondence with them over the years, but just making sure we check back with them, because I learn stuff from those guys all the time about that area, and I know they've embraced your new community into their residents and they give them welcome baskets and stuff. So they're the people that I would be going to. So save double handling. I would be speaking to those people.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Not a good as well. Yeah.
I mean, if you came to us and said that this is something that the local residents were okay with, that would be a very strong indicator for us as a board that would help us make the decision too.
Okay.
Yeah. Kier?
I guess I was just kind of, and it's really good having the additional context, because I think that's one thing that we kind of miss is when you only get 2 or 3 at a time, you don't really see the rest of the,
right, yeah.
So having some of that context. For me, and I guess this is maybe a bit similar to Mel's comment, is, say Frederick Wilson, where, maybe you've got Frederick and Charlotte. And obviously I imagine that being a building caretaker, both of them were probably in the 1915 era, probably both of them were doing quite a lot of work. Kind of how do we recognize both of those people or something as part, and that doesn't necessarily have to be this
It can
today,
be
but
Frederick Charlotte, I guess it doesn't have to be the name.
And it doesn't have to be today, because that's not one of the ones that would be naming today in a way, but just some of that stuff would be cool to see, is making sure that we're,
incorporating,
not maybe perhaps sometimes just defaulting to one or the other.
No, fair call. Yep.
All right. Is there anything else that you wanted from us in terms of?
No, I guess sign off. Good. And to be fair, with the changes of them, and I'm not sure which ones of that list, that I'm not actually concerned on what names we use, and I do think that the Emmeline one would be a good mix up to throw in there. So yeah, I guess moving forward, I'll try and get a little bit more buy-in from the community board. And
I appreciate that, Hamish, and it does mean a lot you showing up here today and
Cool.
chatting
No,
us
thank
through
you.
it. I've not had this opportunity before to talk to the person on the ground.
Any other questions before I go? Or?
Yeah.
All right.
No, that's
good.
great. Thanks so much. Thanks for your
Wonderful.
time.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah. Okay. So now we have the report. So have we got Paul online? Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me, Paul?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent.
Like Will, you're very quiet, so it might be a problem on our end. So I'll just ask everyone to be very quiet when Paul's speaking, so we can hear him. Yeah. Did you want to kick us off, Paul?
Yeah, look, I will briefly speak, especially having just listened to Hamish, and I'd concur with him that it's not always easy coming up with road names. They need to be sufficiently distinct, from other road names, so as not to cause confusion. And they also need to be relevant, for the locality. It's not unusual, for there to be a number of themes running through one subdivision. And there probably are some ways that we can work with Hamish to get a whole bundle, of road names put in place, because he will have a master plan, I would imagine, sort of mapped out. And that can actually be a more effective way of getting larger scale subdivision, road names in place, because the whole bundle of names and the context, can be better reviewed, at the decision making stage. So that's certainly something we can work with on with Hamish. Just as a general comment, we are aware that with the landowner theme being quite popular, that it does underrepresent females. So we are actively encouraging the developers to think about the wider family, not just the male landowner, who's on the title, from some time back. It's not always straightforward because there's more research that needs to be done there. And again, it needs to be a distinct name as well.
And I think about those kind of themed areas, and often those are tying a certain area to its history in a way that isn't tying it necessarily to the names of people. Like I'm thinking about Wigram Skies and how all of the streets around there, they're not, they're all aeroplanes. It connects it really strongly to its history without actually having to be the name of a person who owned property there.
Yeah, that's right. And if you look at around Hallsville Quarry, obviously not in your area, but there's a lot of quarrying related names, not just people, but equipment, machinery, White's Tramway, things like that.
Tim's got a question for you.
Just supporting Mel's comment with regard to swapping Emmeline Chapman for the male. There's no hold up if we recommended that today, is there?
All the names in the report are available for selection. So we intentionally put options forward so the community board can pick what names they see best.
So I'm happy to move it with the change that was recommended by Melanie.
Yeah. Do we have any questions for that, Kia?
So my question is around, obviously there was a conversation about using te reo, and the land doesn't have any inherent cultural significance. So the Runanga were not, I suppose, quite frankly, in a position to spend time providing that, and that's completely cool. And I wouldn't expect the Runanga to do that. What I was wondering is, and then the developer says, and quite rightly, look, I don't want to just pick a name out of a hat and risk causing offence or risk being inappropriate, and that's totally cool. Is there anything that the council can do to provide options that would be perhaps not, they're not necessarily culturally significant, they don't necessarily carry huge amounts of meaning, but would, however, be a way to, use te reo in, day-to-day ways? Is that something that the council can provide assistance with?
Yeah, we can, and we already are. So obviously they're not going to be significant to tangata whenua, but that doesn't mean that the use of te reo is inappropriate. For example, whether you use English or te reo, you can still come up with names that are relevant. For example, there might be a topographical feature that we use a te reo name for, or a plant, that we use a te reo name for. Bird life, all things like that are quite relevant for a locality. They can be used, and we have a process in council here where we get our cultural advisor to check that the names are appropriate and are not offensive for whatever reason. And I think they're still good names. They're probably not as good as from Runanga, but we, I would say, I think I mentioned in an earlier report that about a quarter of the names we're getting now are te reo names, and most of them, go through the second tier process we've got within council and away from Runanga.
So just to clarify on that, so the process there, does that still is that process where the council sort of vets te reo names provided by the developer, or is that a process of the council providing those names?
No, ultimately the applicant is responsible for putting forward all road names. So they'll put them forward, but often we can help out the applicant as well, because there can be a lot of back and forth with checking they're not similar to existing names. The cultural advisor may sometimes come up with a better word, for the same thing or object, that the word might be describing. So, but ultimately it has to be put forward by the applicant.
Yeah, just wanted to note that in the context that the deputy just sort of mentioned that they didn't feel the confidence to use te reo, and if that's actually ultimately their decision, then yeah. Sarah?
Yeah, I just want to add that, gosh, maybe 6 years ago, our community board put forward a Part A to council for a review of the road naming policy, and to be done in a way that allowed greater use or encouraged greater use of te reo names. The policy's actually never been reviewed because it just never made it high enough up the priority list of policies to be reviewed. But there has been movement over the time, but we did get a memo at some point, and I can't find it now, through to council, I think, and then the board, from mana whenua representatives saying that they didn't necessarily feel the need to have lots of street names, and wanted to focus on things that were more significant for them. So there was no push from that way, if you like. But they were, happy to help out, but it wasn't a priority, except in, key things. And we found the same with facility names too. There were things that said, yes, actually that's something we'd like to gift a name for, or something, and actually not for others.
Okay, cool. Any other questions? So Tim's moving with the change to Emmeline Chapman. Mel's going to second. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions carried. Fantastic. Okay. So presentation of petitions. There were no petitions. Correspondence. So we've had one letter from another letter from Mount Pleasant Tennis Courts about vandalism, and it has already been referred to staff for advice. I think they're looking for looking forward to the meeting with elected members on site. I'm trying to remember if we've actually, has that been organised yet? Do you know?
I don't believe it is.
Okay. Oh yeah, sorry Tim, just check your microphone on.
Yeah, I have had some further feedback from them that they are working with a private firm to get some alarmed in and things like that, but still the report that we've requested from staff will still be important.
Okay, cool. Tim?
With the meeting on site, if it's to do with vandalism and issues like that, would it also perhaps pay to have the community patrol and police? Because it's a bit useless if we just turn up and just hear what their concerns are, but it would be, but if we can tag that into the community patrol and the local police, I mean, that would kind of tie up all the ends.
It sounds like they've already quite well engaged with the police, and I imagine community patrol as well.
But we need to, because we need to understand what they're asking from us, and that everyone's in line with it.
Yeah,
that's my thinking anyway. It would be, and that would be the same with any area that we would be going to. If we have a community that's concerned about safety in a park, hopefully when we're having that meeting there, the community patrol we'd have some feedback from those groups. But anyway, it's just.
I mean, so the letter says looking forward to meeting members that are interested in coming to site for a visit. So are you interested?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I'd be keen to pop along. So maybe if we just liaise with them ourselves and set something up.
Sure.
Cool. Okay. Oh, now it's briefing on. Oh, sorry, yes. Sarah's moving correspondence. Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Tim? Yep. All those in favour? Against, abstentions carried. Cool. So now I've got a presentation on the community engagement and digital heritage with Christchurch Libraries. Sarah and Simon, is it? Not seeing any Sarah or Simons. Okay. Cool. Have you heard from them? Okay. Well, should we just have a? Oh. Oh, fantastic. Oh, thanks.
Timing.
Fantastic. Have you guys been waiting long? Oh, sorry about that. No, yeah. Yeah, so feel free to take a seat at the table with us and just make sure that your microphone's on. There's a button with a person on it that you click. Just because we have got Will online and it's being videoed as well. So it'll go up on YouTube. Not that you're going to be a big viral star from the Spreydon-Cashmere-Heathcote Community Board YouTube channel. But cool. So you were here to talk about the engagement and digital heritage. Is that right? Cool.
Cool. So it's on now. Yep. And we had a PowerPoint, which I believe was being.
Oh, yep. Joan's just getting it up now, so won't be a moment.
Cool. So I should just launch into it.
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So I'm Simon Daisley, and
I'm Sarah Tester.
And we're the Community Stories Liaison Librarians with the Community Stories Liaisons with the digital content team at Christchurch City Libraries. So we work with the digital heritage repository Canterbury Stories, which has been online now since 2019. So a bit of background to Canterbury Stories. Christchurch City Libraries has been digitising archives and collecting material for about 20 years. Initially, that material was stored on the Christchurch City Libraries website. That was scanned at not perhaps a very high resolution. It was older material. Initially, then that material passed into a platform called Kite Christchurch, which went online in 2008. After that, the Kite Christchurch was part of a broader national Kite project, a digital platform. Only had a lifespan though, of limited lifespan. So we knew in the future that it was going to be wrapped up and we needed to find a permanent home for our large digital collection. So with the opening of Turanga, we launched the Discovery Wall, which is on the ground floor of Turanga. That was accompanied by the website Discovery Wall. And that allowed communities to, for the first time, our content became a lot more accessible. People could access it in their home, through their websites. Sorry, this is Canterbury Stories here just behind us.
If you want the slides to change, I don't think the button's working at the moment. So just give Jane a little signal.
Okay, cool.
She
Thanks,
can click
Jane.
the slide.
Yeah. Just like that. Oh, okay. So that with the open access to community content, that moved us away from being a team that was initially hidden away in Smith Street to being a more broader team of community engagement. So on that, we realized we needed to have much more, a larger platform for content because we knew that we would be getting PDFs, video, and we wanted to have a repository that was going to be the single source of Christchurch's heritage. So with that, in 2019, we launched Canterbury Stories, which is the website you see here. And this is our digital heritage repository. Currently, we have over about 58,000 items published on Canterbury Stories. To put that into context, South Library here has about 70,000 items on its shelves. So if you imagine each item in Canterbury Stories as a book, we could probably fit in here. Our remit covers over the Canterbury area. So we're not just focused on Christchurch City Council's boundaries. We, under the old Act of Canterbury Public Library, we collect as far north as Kaikoura, Arthur's Pass, and down south to Ashburton, Timaru. So we've got quite a broad scope. But mostly our collection contains items that were initially digitized, as I said, 20 years ago, from the library's archives and the council archives. And then items that we've collected from community engagement, where we've either accepted material, digitized it and returned it, or people have given us born digital material, so digital photographs. And we also have a very large archive. We've been digitizing the Star newspaper archive. So we've got thousands of images from hundreds of images, well, about thousands.
Oh, thousands and thousands, yeah.
Thousands of images from the Star newspaper, and that's not only the copy print photographs, but also the original negatives that the photographers took. Oh, wow. And you can zoom in to quite high resolution on those. And so, yeah, I can't give a tour, unfortunately, but if you see at the top, there's a button called Login Register. So that's where members of the public, you don't even have to be a Christchurch City Libraries member, can log in and join up and then leave comments on photographs. So we might have a photograph of a group of people, we don't know who they are. If they were your relatives, you could log in, sign up and say, leave a comment saying, this is my great uncle John with his family at the beach. And then we would add that data into the metadata. And so that way the community itself is contributing and also helping the collection develop and be described. So from there, I'll just pass on to Sarah and she can talk about our roles.
Cool. Well, I guess all of this stuff and how it all fits together into why we're here today and what we're doing. So both Simon and I started doing the roles as Community Stories Liaison as part of a temporary project funded role in 2020. And we sort of split the role between us, and we were really lucky that it was only meant to be a 2-year project. And we were really lucky that Libraries was able to find the money to be able to make both of our roles permanent within our team, which meant that actually we went from being a team that was just waiting for material to come to us to actively switch that around and be able to go out into the community and try and find those connections and find the people that we wanted to connect with and start to plug some of the gaps in the collection as well. You end up very quickly, if you're just waiting for people to come to you, you end up excluding huge portions of your community. So this is a really good way to kind of find the different areas of our communities as well. So our core function really is to enable communities the space through Canterbury Stories to be able to tell the story of their community in their own words. So a lot of that has been around trying to work out what we're strong on in the collection and what we're weak on as well. And we had to do that to understand, who do we talk to? Because when we say the word community, it's huge. It reaches so far. So we did a lot of reviewing the collections, working out what we were strong and what we were weak on. We also, at the start of this year, hosted a community co-design workshop with community groups that we'd worked with. So we actually got them around the table and did some activities and said, hey, what do you want to see in Canterbury Stories? How do you want to work with us? And that was really beneficial, and people really respect that approach as well. We did a similar thing with library staff. And that's library staff who don't work in an office like us. That's library staff that are out in our library network. So out there engaging, talking to communities all the time. So we kind of threw all of that together to come up with some sort of direction for the next year, really. So I guess we'll take you through a few examples of communities that we've worked with. So I will throw it back to Simon.
Okay. And thanks, Jane. Great. So just looking at some of the content from your area, one of the initial communities that I worked with when this role was first set up was the Craigcroft Community Centre based at Old Stone House. My reasoning for this was that this is a very important building because it's the site of where the very first Indian and Muslim communities in Christchurch lived, some of the very first families who arrived in 1854. So I really wanted to ensure that that history and record was preserved here. So I went and met with the community centre. They had a whole photograph album and we took it back, digitized it. And now that collection is available to view online. And I think they showcased some of it at their the event, not last year, but the year before. So that's an example of one historic group from this area. Yeah. I mean,
Cool. All right. Go to the next one. So this was another one that we worked with. So we worked with Langmasters out in Sumner. We heard about the fact that the Hollywood cinema was up for sale and that Lang was going to be retiring. So we made contact with him and said, hey, actually, do you have any photographs? Do you have anything? And for those of you that know Lang, he's quite a down-to-earth guy and basically just does his job. So he didn't have a huge archive himself, but what he did have was an incredible amount of knowledge and memories that he wanted to share with us. So we were able to sit down with him and do an informal interview where he talked about all the cinemas that he'd owned around Christchurch. And me and Simon actually went into Hollywood Cinema after it had sold, but before it had closed and he had retired, and took some pictures of the interior of the cinema as it was. And this is a really good example of how if somebody doesn't have an archive already, just by having a building and some memories, that's enough to build a collection here and to create something that can be recorded for the future as well. So this was a really good example of something that's going to change really quickly. So yeah. All right.
Great.
Do the next
And
one.
another historical area within your scope is the old sanatorium, the tuberculosis sanatorium up on the hill there. So this we've got quite a lot of digital material relating to this, photographs that were taken of the complexes and also patient life. So that's a very important area to preserve. And I believe recently Heritage New Zealand's also, one left, So it's really great to see that. And we also have I think they uploaded a photo of that preserved shelter recently to Discovery Wall. So it was really great to see that engagement from them. So
is that a photo of a drawing of it up there?
Oh yes, that's it. Yeah. So we've got a photo of it in Discovery Wall. So but yes, I mean the area that your board covers has a very old history. Obviously Addington, the very old working class area, a lot of history there. Sydenham's an area that we're very much interested in the history of. Again, another sort of model working class borough that was developed. We don't have too much digital material relating to the history of early Sydenham, which is a bit of a shame. So we'd like to capture more of that area. And then obviously the Beckenham area. I mean, this was originally all the farmland for Ern Clark, the Clark estate. And then you had the vicarage just down the road where the school was. So it'd be really great to sort of include more of that material.
All right. And so this is an example of the Littleton Street Dairy in Spreydon as it was. It's recently changed, but just a bit. So this is a really good example of actually something that was photographed really recently, but has changed really dramatically in a very, very short space of time. And this is something that a lot of our neighborhoods are going through. They're changing dramatically. So it's, as much as we talk about the really historic nature of what we do, we're also capturing things that are happening right now and for the future. Because you could take a photograph of a dairy and it could get demolished and change into something else within a few weeks. So it's a great example of how we're capturing that modern photography as well, to kind of think, actually, how are our neighborhoods changing? How are we reflecting the changing nature of how all of our suburbs all fit together?
I never would have thought to take a photo of a dairy, but I'm really glad that someone did, because actually I was a bit moved to see that. Oh man,
This was actually one of my colleagues who works in digital content. I also took a photo of this dairy because I used to live on that street, so it was local to me as well. But it's interesting. There are certain historic things like that you don't even think about. You don't think. Yeah. 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 So it's a lot of that documentary heritage of what we're doing and how our especially post-quake and things are being rebuilt, and all of that is all changing as well. So I guess that leads us on to, I guess, our final slide, which is basically asking how you guys can support us, really. If you know of any community groups or community projects that actually could benefit from having content put onto Canterbury Stories as well.
Well, Sarah, Tim,
Just because the dairy kind of sparked me, because the Hardings, Herb the Hardings, or it's known as Hardings chemists, they haven't been chemists for a long time because the old man, when he anyway passed on, but the family still have photos. They also had a substantial house on the hill, and so they've got a lot of historic photos. Many of the Beckenham shops, which has totally changed. If that would help, I could put those, talk to them, put forward their through the staff, forward their contacts to you. And the second one was an old gentleman, and my wife will have his contacts. He's probably passed on, but his family were very early photographers, and they showed us photos of the hill and other areas that had maybe 5 or 6 houses, so way back. But now, I mean, our house was built in 1923, and they've got photos before then. So so if that would, if those contacts would help, because they're quite stunning photo, kind of well.
Yeah,
and it helps fill in that gap, like you said, that area of early Kashmir, like how it was built and what lifestyle, what life was like living up on the hill.
It was certainly the Beckenham, because that's now going through its next stage, because there's no longer going to be a chemist there. So what will be the next? Who knows? But I'll do that through staff.
Great, thank you, Sarah.
For me, a lot of this will initially focus, I would guess, on connections in the built environment and stuff. For me, I know the environmental space has had a really hard time trying to access ways to store the stories and things from the various environmental groups. There's no buildings and things associated with them, but you look at your Waihoro River Network and the King George V Reserve, which is 30 years old now and started off as nothing. It's a tiny forest that's been grown over 30 years. It started off with Colin Merkins doing the design. Ihutai Estuary Trust, with the work that's happened in Charlesworth Reserve, was horse paddocks, is now the most amazing wildlife reserve. Those kind of environmental groups who've got a lot of probably oral history along with photos before and afters and that kind of stuff.
I mean, that's fantastic. And actually environmental groups is one of the areas that was identified as a priority for us. We've done a lot of work trying to reach out to groups like community gardens and working in that space. So connections in that area would be fantastic.
Okay.
The Otago or Waihoro River Network has a project that they're quite interested in doing, an interpretation storytelling about the river itself as well, which
starting to collect some of that stuff would be helpful for that as well as
it could go both ways.
And with intangible heritage funding.
Lee and then Mel.
Just very briefly, HOHAP are a local organisation that have a lot of group housing. They did a relaunch they did a kind of gathering a few weeks back, and they've actually started to catalogue their stuff, but I think there might be some cross-pollination because they're part of our rich tapestry of our local community. So maybe you could collectively share some information because it's a key part of our community. So Jack Campbell is the person leading that project of collating all that information. So maybe that'll be a good person to.
So so in terms of what's helpful for you, are you wanting us to sort of popcorn ideas at you, or do you want us to get our staff to support you with that and send through a list of things, or what is it that's most helpful for you?
A list of kind of key contacts and kind of a bit of a sort of steer on what's the best way to go about connecting with these people, because I mean we're quite happy just to go out and connect with people. We just want to make sure that we facilitate it the right way for the right people and all of that sort of stuff. So
no, that's fantastic, because I mean I think it's a beautiful example of where you could have a real good win there. And maybe if we and ahead of that even just send through some contact information as well. Kier? Oh, sorry, Mel. Yes, you're right. And then Kier.
The first social housing on Barnet Ave, which is in Sydenham, that needs to be recorded soon. That's obviously council, was council asset. And then the other thing is a bit of a side tangent, but when we did our Anzac Day commemoration, in the past we've read stories of at one of our local events about soldiers, and then we couldn't. I was searching online for it and couldn't find it, and it's like it. But the librarians, I wondered if that sort of thing, like the history of, I don't know where that weed, basically, but I was just wondering if
Do you want to
that
talk
could be
about
some-
Simon? 'Cause it was your
Um,
project.
You know about it, good.
So
Yeah.
initially there was the Dub 100 project, which was done to commemorate the First World War from 2014 to 2018. Those biographies are written, a lot of library staff selected soldiers from their particular area, did a biography of a particular soldier, and it went on to Kite Christchurch. When Kite went down, those bios, a lot of people thought those biographies and that work had been lost. It was all downloaded and hidden away. Then since December up until last week, I've been going through every bio. It's about 380 biographies, editing them, bringing them up to standard, adding new fresh hyperlinks to their original military files.
Wow.
And they're all in Canterbury Stories. And I think, Jane, they're the ones I sent, but they were, yeah. And so if you go into Canterbury Stories, under exhibitions, there's a section called service personnel, and it's not limited to soldiers, nurses, because we have a lot of local nurses who drowned, like the three who drowned in the Marquette sinking, when it sunk by the U-boat. And then we also had pilots and Navy service personnel. But about 380 of those biographies are now available to read. And those are just the biographies that are people who are on memorials in the area. There's still plenty more service personnel in Christchurch who in broader Christchurch area who haven't been recorded yet. So the Waltham Gates soldiers, they're all listed there. And also there's a little brief history of the Waltham Memorial as well. So you can go read that.
A question from us.
Yeah, sure. If I send it to the appropriate people. Yep.
So a question from Kia and then yeah.
Follow up on that, I guess one way we use that resource is that when we do Anzac Day, we take those stories to the place. So one thing that'd be really cool is, I'm just having a quick look now, if they could be cross-referenced back to the memorial, because that makes it super easy for us. And I'm not sure if that's like, that might be asking a bit, but just because that's one of the use cases. we have.
That's so at the bottom of each item in Canterbury Stories, there's what's called metadata tags. You notice these little blue bubbles buttons. So every soldier who say is on the Waltham Memorial, there should be a metadata tag that has Waltham Memorial Gates.
No, and I don't think there is. I'm just looking at Frederick Wilding, and it doesn't seem to be there.
Oh, so Wilding. All right. So yeah.
So Britling didn't either. So I
okay.
might flick it there for us. That's good.
Yeah. So that would ideally cluster together every item that's linked to the Waltham Memorial Gates. In that case, like we tried to be as accurate as possible. But
Just an actual question, sorry, which is obviously a lot of this is content that's not digital native. It's content that's been brought into a digital world. What is the library doing in terms of collecting digital native content? So, I mean, I'm really aware that a lot of things that are now, there's a lot of ephemeral stuff that now happens on Facebook that previously would have happened on, community newsletters, things like that. Does the library have a strategy for that kind of collection?
For things that are on social media, that is a whole new, that is one of those things that I think, not just nationally, internationally, it's one of those things that is really complicated. Through a lot of the groups that we work with, they will replicate the content that they put on Facebook and will use it basically on Canterbury Stories as well. We have many a conversation about ways in which to capture things on social media, and we're certainly not there yet because it's changing all the time. So somebody could post something, and a lot of the time, especially on some of the community pages, someone will post an image and post a beautiful story as a comment, but there's no way of capturing it because people just do it in a sort of transient way. They're not trying to save it for an archive for the future. So yeah, the answer is we're totally aware of it, but we don't have a full-on strategy for it yet. But yeah, hopefully eventually we'll work towards that. But yeah, it's a very complicated issue, that one.
All right. Well, it sounds like we've got a bit of workshopping to do to think of things in our area that we need to jump onto. I think that Mel's one around the social housing is quite an urgent one though, because it's all boarded up and probably going to be demolished soon. But yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're well connected with
Oh,
that
okay,
team,
cool,
so
cool.
yeah,
All right.
we can reach out to them and see what
That's in
they're
hand.
doing.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate that.
Cool.
Thank
Thank you so
Fascinating.
much, guys.
Absolutely fascinating. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So next item we've got is application for future problem solving international conference. That was Cashmere High, wasn't it? Sorry, that's all right. Howdy, Heather. Thanks for that.
So this is, well, as you quite rightly say, all the information is there
Hmm.
in front of you. It's another one where there's a number of young people, so it's not being looked at as a youth development fund application, hence the reason why it's come to discretionary response fund. And it's something a little bit different because a lot of the ones we get are sport ones. So this is something just a little bit different. And the recommendation is basically it works out at $200 per student going to the conference.
Cool. Yep, Tim, we've got a mover and Tim. I'm happy to second. Yep. All those in favour? Against, abstentions carried. Cool. Thanks, Heather. So now we're on to board plan. Awesome. Jane. So I know you'll have all read your the board plan because you helped write it. Thanks, mate.
All right, so I'm taking you've all had a chance to look at it. And are you happy to adopt? Or questions?
Yep.
As I was reading the paper version, Jane had a couple of copies when I got here. And it's not actually even in our board plan stuff, but I think that we should note, so it's in the stuff on council at the beginning. So the contents page and the next page, it talks about local boards, and local boards are an actual separate legal entity in Auckland Council area. So it should say community boards rather than local boards. Yes, they are local, but they're not local boards. And I know they don't have capital letters, but we should be calling them community boards. So it's in the contents and on the next page.
Oh, yeah.
If it's a space thing on the second one, so it shouldn't be a problem on the first page, but on that page 3, if it's a space issue about saying about community boards and our plans, it could just say about boards and our plans if it needed to, and then the community board's main role, but they should be community boards.
Cool. Yeah, good spot.
Yeah.
I missed that.
And the other question was in page 5, it's probably a photo from the Strengthening Community Strategy, but it would be great to have a local one. That's Linwood Park. And it would be great maybe to put one up from the Waltham.
That is quite an old photo too.
Yeah, because it was being painted for the old toilets. and stuff. But
Yeah.
a nice one from the Waltham Fair or something, which is a community. But it's just it's a Linwood photo rather than our board area.
No, definitely agree with that, Sarah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's probably it.
Superimposed here.
Cool.
And I don't know whether we need to note anything officially there. I mean, you say, with minor amendments as discussed or something like that, because I'm told that beginning bit, those first couple of pages have gone to every board, they're
Yes, they
generic.
are.
So there's a decision that's been made internally, they're not for our board. So whether we need to resolve that on our one, it's different. Because internally they might decide, no, they've gone to all the boards, they've been signed off, we're not going to change it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Should we flex the muscle?
Yeah, it's our board plan.
It's our board plan,
document.
and so
Yeah.
So could we have some sort of resolution which specifies that the words local boards are changed to community board on pages 2 and 3?
I mean, if they're going to fight us on it, it's going to make them. It's
And
going
that
to
we
embarrass them more than anything.
suggest, or due to local board, I don't know.
Just,
I think it'll be
just,
really obvious.
yeah, it'll be immediately clear to anyone who reads it. Yeah.
And that the photo on page 5 is changed to a local board photo.
Yep.
A local board event.
Sorry, our local community board photo.
Yep.
To a local ward photo. Yes.
Yeah.
Or just a local photo as opposed to a local board photo.
Yeah, a community, yeah.
At least have a debate about that.
Yeah.
Waihoro.
Nice. Well, you're good.
Yeah.
I knew you were here.
Cool. Oh, thanks, Sarah. That's small but important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments or things to note, questions? Cool. I do want to say that the quality of this board plan, the work that's been put on by staff is really high. And we've been given feedback from multiple other boards and staff and board members and members of the community that are impressed with the quality of this work. So I just want that needs to be said now. And a huge thanks to Grace and Jane and Amy and everyone who's worked on that document. Yeah. Cool. All right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a good idea. Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I think as well, the process, you don't need to write all this down, but the process that, we were supported to do as a board by Grace allowed us to not get engaged in the whole horse trading thing with, bits and pieces from each ward. It was a holistic document that covers all of our ward areas. Yeah. Yeah, nothing was dropped. Yeah.
On page 15, going with Sarah, did we talk about page 15, your local board members?
No, I haven't talked about that yet.
It just has that as a title.
Oh, gotcha. Yep. No, that's a good spot.
That's another place where I could say community instead of local, page 15.
But maybe instead of specifying the page number, we just say wherever it is written. Yeah. Yeah, just wherever it's written.
Wherever it says local
found
board
a few
together.
instances, not just on page 2 and 3, so it could just be.
There's one on page 15. Sarah.
Yeah,
The
so
title.
we'll just say wherever it's written. Yeah.
If you take out pages 2 and 3, and just say we're appropriate.
Maybe it's a hint to the future.
I think that's fine. Yeah.
So page, I'll just note it on my
Yeah.
2, 3.
I mean, the resolution will allow you room to go and do that editing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Check others. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to move that we accept the board plan. All right. Thank you. All those in favour? Against, abstentions, carried. Fantastic. No debate. No. Cool. So now we can come to the area report. Sorry, Heather, you're up and down.
Well, it's new to me to be doing the area report, so I noticed that the Edible Sustainable Garden Awards have been included back in the report. I don't know if there's anything else which I need to actually go through in terms of the report. I think the other addition is probably the listing with the heritage for Heritage New Zealand for the hut.
Yep. So we've had some concerns raised in the community around the ongoing maintenance of that hut and whether it's something that's being looked into council's maintenance schedule. Just wondering if we can take this opportunity to ask staff for advice about that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the 4.2. Yep. That's the Cashmere Sanatorium. Yep. Mel? And then Mel and then Sarah.
This is just a comment. One of the women who wrote a letter to the board, correspondence, about Rose and Hoonhay Road, the pedestrian island. She emailed me today going, oh, did anything happen with that? And I was like, oh yeah, okay, right, found a memo and forward it. But actually it just should be a loop closing thing that we actually, I mean, I can take responsibility for it, but it would be easier You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I think we should try and actually make a point of getting back to correspondence and having a list and actually recording whether we've told them what's happened or not.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because I've been in that situation where I've been emailed, referred to staff, and then had that loop back, and I've not been sure whether that loop's been closed. But
It's usual practice to do that, so
Okay.
we will just check the process.
okay, yeah, it was the perfect outcome, really. Sarah.
Thank you. Just do this one, I guess. The toilets for Rapaki Road. We've talked about some stuff, funding of a public toilet at Rapaki Track, and it's in our board plan, which just passed, which is great as well. And the advice we've got back is, there's one at the bottom. And actually, for most people, that's not the issue, because they've either just arrived or
They're just about to go home.
just about to go. But actually, while we will do some other future work on that, sort of halfway up where there's a water supply or something, I'm wondering if we could just check in to see whether there's decent signage to let people know that there are toilets close by. So maybe, we know where the sort of the proper start of the track is. Actually having some signage there that says to people, there are no public toilets on this track, but there is one, and here's a little map. Or just like that sort of little council sign that actually lets people know where the closest ones are for now.
It'll be a good stopgap.
And we've done that
Yeah.
a couple of times for like Coastal Pathway and stuff.
Yep.
Which I think, so if we, off the back of this information, could we pass a resolution, since the information's here, just to request some signage to the nearest public toilet at the bottom of Rapaki Track?
They should really
Or
be a
something
good
along
sign
those
there, so
lines.
as they come turning into.
And, facing both ways maybe.
Yeah.
Yep.
Once they get to the top, it's.
Yep. No, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you, Joan? Can you go?
So I've got the hut and signage for toilets.
Yeah, but can we pass a resolution on the?
Yep. So we'll
signage?
add,
Yes. Oh, sorry, yeah.
you'll add that to the resolution. Yep. Yep. Cool. Okay. Anything else, Tim?
Just on the toilet for Rapaki Track, we've gone over it and we've had a number of discussions with parks and whoever with regard to the difficulty having a toilet, say halfway up. Certainly can't have it at the top because of vandalism, we all know that. But I just can't understand when we have talked with them and we give the example of the Bellbird toilet, it's compostable toilet.
Yep.
Right. It's typically when
It
we're
is,
being
but there's
in.
one there.
Yeah. So if it works there, why can't it work on,
It's a non-plumbed. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we could
And
ask
dock have a
that.
lot.
Yeah. Because it's happening.
Yeah.
It's an issue. We've got a place halfway up.
Yep.
Which won't be vandalised, hopefully.
I have had feedback on my question on the Port Hills management plan, and there is now funding in the draft annual plan.
Cool.
For the
Okay.
So if we could just.
So yeah, so the advice we received from staff is about the lack of plumbing, meaning that it's not viable. So what we're asking is there anything that staff have recommendations from staff around non-plumbed facilities?
Where's the plumbing for the Bellbird
Yeah,
toilet?
yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. All right. Anything else? Cool. Okay, so just so we've got receiving the report, we've got confirmation about the maintenance schedule for Coronation Reserve, we've got signage around the toilet at Rapaki Track, and we've got requesting information or advice around a non-plumbed toilet facility, whether that be possible.
And the comparison
It
should be
does-
of Bellbird.
Yeah, it does say there that 3 options will be investigated for the renewal of the toilets. Renewal at current location, relocate on Rapaki Road at the bottom of the track, and relocate on the Summit Road at the top of the track. Any will require it. So that I would guess that'd be part of the management plan.
Yeah, okay. And then also just following up on Mel's point
At the
around
moment, some signage.
communication. Cool. That was basically, we were going to request staff advice on a non-plumbed, on non-plumbed toilets.
But it does look like they're going to be investigating it, and there is budget for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 50,000 in 2025, and which I guess is planning. And there's 360,000 in 2026.
Yeah, because it's kind of odd that they're going to investigate at the top because we've had numerous.
But it might be a composting one.
No, but it's the
Yeah.
issue that at the top, the issue isn't plumbing, it's vandalism.
Yeah.
I'll give it a week and it won't be there.
Halfway.
All right.
would be great.
So I'm happy to move the area report.
Yeah.
Tim, yeah, Sarah's going to second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, abstentions carried. Thanks, Heather. Okay, so now we move to elected members exchange.
I got organised for this one.
Cool. Well, given that you're organised, Sarah, you can pick us
All
up.
right. Like every other time I've been scrambling, but I put a thing in my diary underneath the meeting where I could just fill in things in the calendar. Then I wouldn't
Someone
lose it.
here is a girly swat to say.
Well, it's taken me 7 months to get this far. So,
All right.
But,
Yeah.
so one issue that's come up, and it's come up in a couple of wards, is recycling bins, especially being nicked. And when people have complained about it, and I've asked through, the response every time is, if you don't let us know within 24 hours, you have to pay for it. You get another one there. And it seems like, the thing is, one woman was in hospital, and so couldn't have known within 24 hours, but it's staff policy, and that's what happens. And yet it turns out that if you report it again in a month's time and don't say it wasn't within 24 hours, there's something, anyway, it allows it to happen. Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And other people do. So I'd like us to request some advice on a change in policy on that one. And yeah, because it's, the thing is, the bins aren't even owned by the people. The bins are owned by the company, and it's in council's interest not to have lots of rubbish going to the tip. So it doesn't make sense to have a person pay when their bin is stolen that belongs to someone else, if that makes sense. So if we could request some advice on a process to change that policy.
Yep. Mel?
On that, people don't know that, I mean, I wouldn't have known the 24-hour rule either. People just don't know the rule. So whatever the rule is, it needs to be communicated, like a sticker on every bin or
Yeah, something.
Cool.
something like that needs to happen.
Yeah. Cool. So happy to request staff advice for that. Yep.
The next one, and I think Tyler's dealing with this one as well, is there is no current policy. If a cat is knocked by a car and dies at the side of the road, staff will dispose of it without checking it for a microchip to let owners know. Yeah. And so just requesting that staff check
Yeah.
for microchips.
That sounds like it should be basic process.
You would think
Yeah.
so. Some of these are just things I've been dealing with Jane, so I might just follow this up by email. I've had some concerns raised by a couple of emails, safety issues in Sydenham at the moment. So I'm going to be meeting with the woman from the Funky Pumpkin and some other business owners. There's no business association there anymore. It folded some years ago. So we're going to meet next Friday morning just to chat about some of the issues they're having at the moment. I'm dealing with an issue on the cycleway being built in Heathcote. I met with the people from St Mary's Church on the weekend. It's 5 years since the thing was consulted on. There's no actual separated cycleway there, but there's going to be a whole pile of yellow lines, which mean that they can't park hearses or wedding cars. And there's a funeral once a month and those kind of things. And so we're working with staff on that. And I went to the Sumner Fire Station opening, the Redcliffe Residents Association AGM, and the Mount Pleasant Community Centre 70th anniversary.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Fantastic members exchange. Efficient, straight to the point, well organised. Well done. Tim.
Right, on the other end of the scale, just saying. Yep. No pressure. Bloody hell. Right, okay. I took the mayor on a site visit of the Cashmere ward, and hopefully we'll get a few more, because I thought it was just good timing because of the debate that we had over the South Library. So obviously we visited here and he visited the staff, which was really cool. With that visit, I got him to meet the Apauhau River Network, and because there's not really much time, and I got him to meet Ken and Sue Bai, because they also, not only are they Lower Cashmere Residents Association, but they're also the Community Patrol. So I thought that was a good crossover. And then Cashmere Tennis, because they are their ongoing issues with flooding, etc. So just 3, and then a few flooding issues, etc. And what's known as the Heathcote stream, which is a constant running water down Heathcote Road. We are sure it's from the reservoir, and residents are saying on the uphill side of Heathcote Road, just by the reservoir, that there's sometimes intermittently it goes through their properties as well, which must be a real pain. So hopefully now that the Mayor's office, I've only been going on about it for 2 years, so hopefully they'll pick that up. Following that, because I'm the chair of the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Committee, I said that I was concerned about the welfare of the staff here with regards to the lack of air conditioning, etc. So we had our site visit here this week, which was great, and they're looking at solutions. If the cleaning of the underfloor pipes hasn't worked, then we're going to they will look at putting in air conditioning units to try and ensure that there's an airflow in it. So that, because the library staff, and I'm hoping it's not the same for you, but I'm sure it will be our local staff, is that the respiratory and problems with eyes, etc., because of the just not controlling the heat and things like that. So hopefully that will put a rocket in there. So that's good. Cashmere Tennis, they've just making an application. I went and saw them separate to Phil and said that maybe they should be more sensitive with regards, which they are, to the colours in the areas when they're talking about courts, because anyway, to their credit, they are trying to match it with the brick buildings and the greenery. So that's really good. So hopefully it's going through, and I CC Jane and her new Grace in on that. So hopefully that can get around as we go forward. The Bowenvale intersection with Centurus Road, I've had a couple of 3 contacts over that, and it's not surprising to any of us, because it's just the same traffic, just further away, just working its way around as we knew it would. So, but I've said that we're working, we've actually done a lot around the bottom of the hill, and once we catch our breath and move forward, we'll look at that as well, I'm sure. So anyway, that's that one there. Riverbank condition, a couple of locals have, which is quite right, when they've contacted me with, especially around the Beckenham ponds. If you go there, there's intense weed in the ponds. They said, you used to be able to take your kids and stand on the edge of the pond and look in, and look at cockabully, whatever they are, but you can't actually get to them anymore. So it's actually pretty rough looking. So if we could get some information on that, that'd be really good from Parks.
Okay, happy. So requesting information from Parks on the maintenance of the Beckenham ponds.
And also it does seem that, and again, if you look at that the old military bridge at the end of Bowenvale, like there does seem to be a lot of weeds. I know, and I explained that we're trying to do the growing the longer grass because it's better for the native ducks, etc. But I went and had a look what they were talking about, and it does seem it's kind of getting overgrown with just weeds. So anyway, and the last one is the Craycroft sign. So they contacted me to say, what's happening and can we go ahead? I didn't have you received anything? Okay, I'll go back, because they think they sent something through, but obviously it hasn't connected. So I'll go back to them. Because I went back to them and said that we haven't received anything.
Okay.
And so could they resend it? So I'll go back to them. Yeah.
Cool.
Was there not an action from the last, because we did get a deputation of public forum, and they had it, they brought the sign and we photocopied it. So there must be an action from that still to follow up now.
Yeah, it's with staff at the moment to come back for advice. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, Lee.
I went to there was an offshoot from the zone committee, which was around sediment control. So there's a workshop that I attended. It was actually quite good because they had all the stakeholders. So they had everything from farmers, landowners, volunteer organisations, obviously ECAN, experts, council staff. So they actually had a good hui of a good cross section of all of the stakeholders. So it was a workshop. It was quite long. It was 3 or 4 hours. I didn't get all of it, but I got an amount of it in, good conversations. There is some notes that will circulate, just some of the key findings or some of the key parts of discussion or things that the zone committee is going to advocate for. So I'll share that when I can. Anzac, I did obviously got to Vic Park for Anzac as well. Really well attended. It's just such a beautiful ceremony and point of reflection up there. It's just a very nice place to go. And I did get a letter of thanks, which I'll distribute as well from Jane, the secretary. And finally, I did get a correspondence from the landowner of 11 Humboldt. I don't know if anybody else has, and that was regarding the road stopping issue that the board discussed. So I think they've
okay, interesting.
So I'll just follow up with staff, because it's my understanding is we've now passed that to staff, and I think we've actually made that decision. And I don't think we could relitigate that, but I just will need to follow up on that, because I've just had correspondence on that as well. So cool.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet. Thanks, Lee. All good.
Just that the Hunhei Community Centre repairs are underway, like there's fencing up and there's vans that go in there every day. Last week. Today I went, Heather was there too, about a networking meeting for organisations in the south part of Christchurch. So there might be something regular sort of starting up, because there has been some in the past. There's safety concerns, the burglary sort of stuff happening in different places. There's an issue in Warren Crescent. I think I might have brought this up last time, but there will be a community meeting for them. They've got a very tight-knit Facebook group, which I was totally unaware of, so I might want to join that to see quite specific stuff they talk about. It's quite good. And same in just Spreydon generally. And so I'm in contact with Megan Woods' office and also the police, so we're getting some dates sorted for meetings for both of those areas. I've had a thing about Riverbank along the Heathcote from some individual people. Odoring's driveway, I was just going to mention, I drove out of there behind Carolyn the other day and she turned right. She got out okay, so but it will help to go in lines here. And then there's been a bunch of other individual issues. Some of them are to do with shared lanes, which are quite tricky. Like there's one where there's a mix of social housing and residents and fights over parking, and it's been quite a drama, and it's sort of still ongoing. So I'm in contact with various people about that. There's one where there's a water leak on a property, which is a driveway, again, with lots of owners on it, and a lot of them are rented and they have no idea how to contact those people, and the pipe belongs to those places, and that's water's pouring out, and what's council's role, which theoretically is none because it's private, but there's other things with that. So I'm sort of looking into that. And then, I had to talk to a man last night who's been banned from the rec centres to explain to him why he's been banned. So I had quite a long conversation with staff and a whole long story. So lots of things like that.
Thanks, Mel.
Just so two things. One, forward looking, which is just to obviously the mother of all cleanups this weekend. So obviously that's a cool thing. And I think just to acknowledge Helene's work on that one, because I think she might be looking at stepping back. So that might be something we think about as well. The other thing was just, I guess, obviously we did Bottom Gates and Sydenham Cemetery on Anzac Day, and we got a really lovely email about that from I think I discussed this at a briefing, but just to put on the public record, I guess that a really lovely email from a dad whose son had been part of that, and it was really special to him. So that was really nice to, I guess, have that opportunity.
Just this season, Suburbs Rugby Netball 75th anniversary this season. So it kicked off with a hiss and a roar. Just good seeing some older people throwing on their boots and netball shoes.
Oh, fantastic. Tim, you got a photo for us, haven't you?
Yes, I've got a photo for you if it comes up the right way. I got asked by a resident of Tuawera Terrace in up on Clifton Hill if I could come and have a look. She had raised a ticket asking to have a little bund put across her driveway so water off the road didn't flow down it. And she said she was told by council staff who visited that there's only a quarter of the road draining to her place, so it's not much, and we won't be doing it. And that even if you complain, we won't change our view. So I had quite a look at the area. What you've got is, this is looking up to Awera Terrace, and all of the properties on the right-hand side have either bunds or slopes, just small asphalt ones, to keep the water on the road. So it comes all down the road to her place, including from driveways on the left, which have several houses up. And then it flows down her driveway straight at her front door. She has a little drain to collect it and take it away, but that's not the point. She parks a car and has to walk through water to get to her door. Further down, so there's two properties that don't have a bund, and further down they have channel, curb and channel. So you've got the street where you've got all of the water flowing down two property driveways, etc. So I said I would bring it up at the board. We have a ticket number. I think it's completely unfair.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, our board can refer that to staff for advice and a follow up on that ticket and why she was given that advice.
Yep. And also I went to the Redcliffs Residents Association AGM and the Rising Home AGM, and I was also involved in the Coastal Pathway and other residents about the placing of a cell phone tower in Redcliffs, which caused a lot of things. But the main thing it has done is it has means the Coastal Pathway Group are now investigating how they go about changing the status of the land that the pathway is on.
Okay.
So that they get better protection.
All right. Okay, thanks, Tim. Update from me. Well, yeah, Kez already mentioned the NZEC services. I've had a chat to local residents who's just arrived in town around food, sort of food security and food growing. So kept it up with all of some of our local community gardens, etc. And they're looking like they're going to be organising a kind of community hui for food security, which is kind of interesting. Going to head along to that in the coming month. And I'll flick on details of that if you're interested when I get them, about when and where. Also had an invite to the Irish Society dinner, which is going to be, looks like a very well catered and fun event. Yeah. If anyone, where I'm able to send, if I'm unable to go, which is quite likely with the young baby, if there's anyone who might be interested in going to that, let me know and I can pass the invite on to you. Cool. All right. That's me. Should we go? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thanks, Lee. Will, are you still with us?
I'm still here.
Oh, good on you, mate.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'll put my hand up straight away for the Irish Society.
All right.
you had me before you even said it was well catered. So that's first, but I've also had a bit of a recycle bin issue pulled my way, not to do with theft this time, but to do with reliability. And there's in particular the battle between the recycling bin and the Christchurch Easterly, which can sometimes rear its head. I was involved with a big cleanup job a couple of weeks back when it got the better of all the bins up and down in Monk's Spur, where I am. Also noted that a couple of people in Heathcote Valley one person had got hold of me, and then I read about it on the page, on the Facebook page. But I was just wondering if someone who's got a bit more experience with the background in council, I had a bit of a look and I couldn't see it anywhere where I could find it, but wheelie bin latches are available in 21 councils within the country.
We've seen that as a board. Someone's come and shown that to us, haven't they?
Right.
Yeah, Tim. Oh, cool.
Yeah, I just wondered if where that had got to. I just noted that.
So Will, your question was around: is there anything on the roadmap or for council providing those to people?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So just to protect obviously the waterways mainly and the community, it was quite a big cleanup job. And if you are, your bin is tipped over and you're at work, then nobody's collecting it. So.
I mean, we've got this issue, and we've also got the issue of the policy around, replacing it. I wonder if it's worth getting a briefing from the rubbish team, whoever it is, waste management. Thank you, the rubbish team. Because of the kind of thing where you can imagine getting a memo and then having more questions as well following that up. So if people are happy to request a briefing, I think that'd be good. Yeah, that's true. Cool. Sorry, Will, you're interrupted. Anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, that's great. Yeah, just wanted to see where we were at with that.
Cool, awesome. Cool. Thanks for that. Okay, so did you capture all that, Jane? Any other questions or go into karakia?
Quickly recap. So advice on process change policy on the bins being stolen. One on microchips, cats being checked for chips before they're disposed of. You want some information from staff on the maintenance of the beacon ponds. Staff to follow up on Tim's issue with Tuawera and briefing for waste management.
All right, fantastic, awesome.
I think I've lost Zoom, sorry.
Oh, all right. Maybe drag that over to that window. So,
Yeah, no, I think I've been kicked out of Zoom.
it's Unu here. Okay. You'll remember this off by heart anyway, of course. Yeah. Unu here, ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua i te ara tangata. Koia rā e rongo whakairia ake ki runga kia tina, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora. Oh, well, Roy is also looking at me when I talked about the Irish Society thing, and